When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject: Dear Grayson. User: CX17. Posted June 9th, 1997.
A week ago, I received a box from my father's attorney. Not an estate lawyer, mind you. There was no estate, just an old man dying alone in a prison cell. He'd been rotting there since 1973 for a crime I spent my whole life believing he committed: the murder of my mother. Inside this cardboard box was an old wallet, a couple photographs from when I was a kid, a handful of well-worn paperbacks, and, of course, a letter. The envelope was unsealed, yellowed with age, upon which was what I assumed was my father's shaky handwriting. Grayson. I frowned. I'd been going by my middle name since high school as an act of rebellion against my senior. After all, who would want to share a name with their mother's killer? But I didn't let this minor detail stop me. I wanted to see what was inside, see what this old man could possibly have to say to me. Would it be justification for what he did, an apology, an appeal to how much he loved me in spite of everything I saw to the contrary? There were different parts of me that wanted each of those things, but none wanted the same, and I was pretty sure no matter what it said, most would be unhappy. But in the end, I honestly wish I hadn't read it, because never in my wildest dreams did I expect the contents to be this. I've copied the letter below exactly as it was written. August 4th, 1975. Dear Grayson, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. That's the only way you'd ever open something from me, and I don't blame you for that. I've earned every bit of your hatred. I was not there for you and can't imagine the pain you felt not only growing up without parents to guide you, but with the belief that your father is the reason you did not have a mother. You did not deserve that pain. No one does. You were an incredible boy with such a bright future, and I was and still am so proud to be your dad. I know you might not care, but it is the truth. But son, please, I beg of you to do just one thing before you burn this letter like I know you'll want to. One thing before you bury the memories you have of me. I need you to hear me. I need you to know that I have carried what happened that night like a stone in my chest for every minute of every day since. I did not kill your mother. I know you think I did. I know you grew up with the stories, with the whispers, with the weight of it pressing on you like it pressed on me. I have no illusions about how the world sees me, but I swear to you on what little life I have left, I was trying to save her. And son, I'm scared that whatever took her, whatever used her, is still out there. started small. 2 weeks before she died, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and find her sitting at the edge of the bed, staring out the window. Her lips would move, but no sound came out. She didn't even seem to breathe. I thought she was sleepwalking. I'd shake her awake and she'd look at me like she didn't know who I was. Then came the whispers. I heard them in the walls, in the pipes, in the spaces where no voice should have been. At first, I thought it was a draft, the house settling, my own damn mind playing tricks. I hadn't slept in days, so maybe it was that. But then I started to understand the words. They said my name. They said her name. And then, one night, I woke up to find her watching me. She wasn't at the window this time. She was standing by the bed, just inches from my face. Her eyes were open, but there was nothing behind them. No recognition, no warmth. Clear as day, she spoke. "He wants you to leave." I asked who. She didn't answer. She just climbed back into bed, rolled over, and went to sleep like nothing had happened. That is when I should have taken you and run. But I didn't. Crazy as it sounds today, I worried about what other people would think. So I just told myself she was tired, stressed, that I was imagining things. I didn't want to believe the truth. The night of the storm, I found her in the kitchen, standing by the sink. Her back was to me, but I knew something was wrong because she was whispering the same way she did at the window, the same way I'd heard through the walls, the same nonsensical, airy words, but this time they were sharp, cutting, and abrasive like a language I wasn't meant to understand. Then she turned, and when our eyes met, I couldn't pretend anymore. Something was not right. I don't know how else to say it, but her eyes weren't hers. She smiled at me, slow, like she was figuring out how to use her own face before croaking out the words, "It's too late now." That's when I saw it. It was behind her, stretching up from her shadow, a figure taller than the room itself, spilling out where she stood. It was thin, black as coal. It didn't have a face, but I swear I felt that son of a bitch grinning. I was so stunned at the sight of this, I didn't see your mother grab the knife, but the next thing I knew, she was headed toward me, wobbling as if she wasn't in control of her own legs, her body jerking with each step as if she had no balance. I grabbed her wrists, begging her to drop the blade, but her strength was like I had never felt it before. Behind her, the shadow laughed. It was inside my head, inside my bones. The lights flickered and I felt my arms move, but son, I beg you to believe me, they were not my arms anymore, not my hands gripping hers, not my fingers forcing the knife down. The next thing I knew, she was on the floor and I was covered in blood. I don't remember what happened after that. Maybe I screamed, maybe I cried, maybe I held her. I don't know. It didn't matter because when the neighbors ran in, all they saw was a man on his knees, hands red, wife dead at his feet. No one would believe me, and I don't blame them. But again, I swear to you, Grayson, it wasn't me. I saw it standing there even after she was gone, curling itself back into the walls. It was watching me and smirking, and I have spent every single night since trying to forget its voice, trying to forget its laughter, trying to forget the way it whispered her name. I don't know what it was. I don't know what it wanted, but I know this. It's still out there. Whether you believe I'm guilty or not is for you to decide, but please, son, please protect yourself from whatever that force is. No child deserves to lose their parents the way you did, and I don't want whatever that thing was to destroy another family. I wish you all the best, Grayson, and I hope you have a beautiful life. Sincerely, your father. I sat in silence after I finished reading. The pages shook in my hand, but the worst part of the story wasn't the story. It wasn't even the death of my mother or my father claiming he wasn't guilty after all this time. It was that I remember my mother's shadow stretching, twisting. I remember her voice sounding wrong, like something was speaking through her. I remember the whispering in the walls, and I remember just before I ran that she smiled the same way she did when she tucked me in at night, the same way she did when she said, "I love you." I don't know what that thing was, but I'm the one as a child who ran to the neighbor's house in the rain that night. I'm the one who begged them to come help, and then to find my father there, covered in my mother's blood. But I know he's right. He didn't kill my mother. Something else was there with us, and now I have to live with that.
Subject, Wailing. User, Doerfer. Posted, September 18th, 1995.
This time last year, while I was at a trade show in the Midwest, I had what I can only call a supernatural experience. This was real X-Files stuff, and I'm not someone who ordinarily believes in that kind of thing, but facts are facts. I'd prefer to be vague about my industry or exactly where the show was, but it was a modern chain-style hotel frequented by businessmen like myself. Gray walls, gray carpets, gray curtains, gray people doing gray jobs. Not the kind of place you'd expect to run into the extraordinary, but that's exactly what happened. The trade show ran over the weekend, Friday to Sunday, but my bosses wanted me there on Thursday for some meetings with prospective clients local to the area. When I checked in, the front desk clerk made some offhand joke about me being early because the other trade show guests weren't checking in until tomorrow. Upstairs, the room was as nondescript as the rest of the hotel, but it had a good bed and water pressure in the shower. Such are the benefits of business class. That first day was totally unremarkable sales stuff. Dinner at a steakhouse in the suburbs, then cabbing downtown for drinks at a local strip club. The trick in situations like that is to keep them happy and drinking while you slowly taper off so you're still sharp enough to work them. I mention this because it's important you know I was mostly sober when I got back to the hotel. Going by the alarm clock on my nightstand, it was just before 2 a.m. when I climbed into bed, and 5 minutes after that, I was asleep. According to that same clock, it was 4 a.m. when I woke up again, thirsty and annoyed. Even though my job involves a lot of travel, it always takes me a couple nights to get settled into a hotel, so I tend to wake up in the night. I sighed, got out of bed, and padded over to the bathroom for a glass of water. That's where I was when I heard what sounded like drunk conventioneers in the hallway outside of my room. I figured it was some of the trade show boys getting an early start, then remembered the desk clerk saying everyone else was arriving tomorrow. Well, I told myself it's possible she was wrong. After all, plans change, and if there's one thing you can count on from people attending any kind of work event where they're not spending their own money, it's them being a pain in the ass. I finished my water and went back to bed. The sound of what I had assumed was trade show attendees coming back to their rooms after a bender stayed at the same volume, which is to say loud, but began to change. It morphed from a rowdy chorus of separate voices to a kind of wailing choir, like a bunch of ghosts from an old-timey movie. Their antics were starting to annoy me, and I got up to shoo them away so I could sleep, but my body wouldn't cooperate. I could stand and I could move in any direction, except for one, toward the door of my room. Whenever I tried, it was like the muscles wouldn't fire. The wailing intensified, entering a register that I didn't think a person could make. It was like listening to someone run scales on a violin, but with what was clearly a voice or many voices. It was the most frightening thing I'd ever heard, not least because I couldn't understand what was making it. Then, it wasn't outside any longer. It was in my room. The wailing seemed to come from everywhere, a hellish symphony of sounds that caused an intense pressure in my head, like the air around me was being compressed. My temples throbbed. The volume increased to an impossible degree, so loud I thought my eardrums would pop. My eyeballs began to vibrate with the sound, a wet, squirming feeling, as if they were trying to escape from their sockets, just when I thought I couldn't stand it any longer, that I was about to go mad or die. I lost consciousness. That morning, I woke up on my bed with a splitting headache, dry mouth, and the flaky remainders of a nosebleed on my upper lip. The wailing, whatever it had been, was gone. The first thing I did after showering off the blood and sweat of last night's events was go down to the front desk to change my room. There was no way I was going to admit to what had happened, so I just said it was a personal preference issue. The clerk said it wouldn't be a problem, as they'd had a lot of vacancies the night before and the first wave of attendees hadn't arrived yet. In what I hoped was an offhand voice, I asked the young man how many people had arrived early like me. He smiled and said I was the first, that the only other people in the hotel the night before were a handful of business travelers on lower floors. You practically had the place to yourself, is how he put it. Lucky me.
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.